He called her his friend, the way some men call a fire warmth. Softly. Casually. Like the word itself could erase the way she looked at him when she thought I was not watching. I noticed the first time she touched his sleeve and left her hand there a little too long. I noticed the second time when she laughed at a joke he had not even finished telling. I noticed the third time when she leaned close enough to smell his cologne and smiled like she had been invited into something private. Her name was Denise. That was the name she used in my kitchen, with her coat still on, the keys still in her hand, the smile already fixed in place. Denise with the smooth hair and the careful voice. Denise who never seemed to blink when she looked at my husband. Denise who said things like, "We go way back," as if history was a leash she had earned the right to hold. At first I gave her the benefit of the doubt. That is what women are trained to do. Make room. Explain away. Turn a boundary into a misunderstanding so you can sleep at night. My husband, Adrian, said she was just a friend. He said it with the confidence of a man who has never had to look at a situation twice. He said it while checking his phone. He said it while tying his shoes. He said it while Denise stood too close behind him in our hallway, pretending not to hear. "She's harmless," he told me once. "You're overthinking it." That was the sentence that changed everything. Not because it was cruel. Cruelty is easier. Cruelty leaves bruises you can point to. No, what changed everything was the ease, the almost affectionate dismissal. The way he said it as if my discomfort was an inconvenience he wished would fold itself neatly and disappear. So I watched. I watched the way Denise only texted him after 9 at night. I watched the way her messages always had a reason and always arrived just a little too late to be innocent. I watched the way she remembered things no ordinary friend should remember. The coffee he liked. The restaurant where he had once said he hated the music. The scar on his wrist from a bicycle he fell off in college. I watched the way she said his name. Not Adrian. Not when she wanted to be heard by me. She said it like she had practiced it in a mirror. Like she knew where the softness landed. There are women who flirt loudly and women who flirt with enough restraint to deny it later. Denise belonged to the second kind. She never crossed the line in one obvious step. She walked up to it slowly, wearing a smile, carrying a polite excuse in each hand. She began by arriving too often. Then she began arriving with small gifts. Then she began staying after everyone else left. Then she started standing in the doorway to our bedroom while talking to Adrian about work, as if the room belonged to her too. I said nothing at first. I set the table. I offered tea. I smiled. I watched her accept my hospitality like she had mistaken it for surrender. That is the thing about women like Denise. They mistake patience for weakness. They confuse restraint with ignorance. They think the quiet ones are asleep. I was not asleep. I was counting. The first thing I counted was time. How often she called. How long she stayed. How long Adrian took to answer when she appeared on the screen of his phone. Then I counted lies. Small ones. Soft ones. The kind that do not sound like lies until you place them beside each other and realize they have built a wall. He told me once he was working late. She posted a photo 10 minutes later from a restaurant 2 blocks from the office. He told me he was tired and going straight home. Her location tag showed the same bar he used to claim he never liked. I did not confront him immediately. Confrontation is a gift some people do not deserve the first time. I wanted him relaxed. I wanted her confident. I wanted them both to keep speaking around me the way careless people speak around furniture. So I became calmer, kinder, more generous than before. I asked Denise to dinner and meant it. I asked about her mother. I asked about her work. I asked questions that sounded polite and left room for answers I would later use. She loved being asked. It made her feel important. It made her feel chosen. She talked more than necessary, which was useful, because people who talk too much eventually hand you the rope they imagine they are tying you with. I learned that she knew Adrian before me. Not just casually. Deeply. She had been there during a bad year of his life, during the breakup before me, during the period he described vaguely as a mess. She said she had helped him through it. Said it with a little smile, like a woman remembering a bruise she had the privilege of touching. "He always comes back to me when things get complicated," she said one evening, stirring sugar into her coffee with slow, deliberate circles. I looked at her. She was watching me too, but not carefully enough. She wanted to provoke me. She wanted a reaction she could later describe as jealousy, instability, insecurity. Instead, I smiled. "That must be comforting for him," I said. Her eyes narrowed by the smallest amount. She had expected heat. She received glass. That night after she left, I checked Adrian's messages again. He had deleted a thread. Not all of it. Just enough to be obvious. Enough to show panic, or arrogance, or both. I sat at the kitchen table while the house slept. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside and left a brief band of white light across the blinds. I thought about what Denise had said. I thought about the way she had looked at him when she said it. And I understood something very clearly. She was not trying to steal my husband. She was trying to remind him that she could. That distinction mattered. It mattered because vanity is easier to trap than desire. Desire hides. Vanity poses. Vanity leaves fingerprints all over the room. So I began building the trap. Not a cruel one. Not a dramatic one. Just a clean one. The kind that lets people reveal themselves without being pushed. I started with an invitation. I told Adrian I wanted to throw a small dinner for a few people. Nothing special. Just friends. Just a little gathering because I had been feeling distant lately and wanted to be social. He looked relieved. That was interesting. Not suspicious. Not concerned. Relieved. As if my desire to gather witnesses was somehow a gift to him. "Denise should come," he said immediately. Too immediately. I kept my expression still. "Of course," I said. He smiled, and in that smile I saw it. Not love. Not innocence. Relief again. The comfort of a man who believes he has been too careful to be caught. The dinner itself was simple. Candlelight. Good wine. Food that required enough attention to seem thoughtful, but not enough to be remembered later. I invited two of our neighbors, my cousin Elena, and one of Adrian's co-workers who owed him a favor and therefore would not lie for him easily. Denise arrived later than everyone else. She made a small apology with a larger smile and handed me flowers that were arranged too beautifully to be spontaneous. She was wearing black. Not mourning black. Intentional black. The kind that says, "I know I look good under dim light." "Oh, this is lovely," she said, stepping inside. "You really know how to make a house feel intimate." She said intimate like it belonged to her vocabulary and not to my marriage. I watched her move through the room. She touched Adrian's arm. She laughed a little too brightly. She sat where she could see him and where he could see her. And then the trap began to close. Not with a slam. With a detail. With the smallest possible thing. A comment, ordinary enough for anyone else to miss. Elena asked how long Adrian and Denise had known each other. Denise answered before he could. "Oh, years. Since before he married." She said it lightly. Like a harmless fact. Then she added, "We used to talk every day back then. Every day." The room did not change. That is the strange thing about betrayal. The lamps stay lit. The glasses stay full. Someone still passes the bread. But inside you, a switch clicks, and the world becomes visible in a new and terrible way. I looked at Adrian. He looked back at me too quickly. That was almost enough. His face did something small and frightened before he arranged it again. I smiled. I asked Denise whether she still had those old photos from back then. The ones from all those years ago. Her face lit up before she could stop it. "Oh, some of them," she said. "Why?" "Because people like you keep souvenirs," I thought. "Because attention is a form of addiction, and addicts always keep something from the supply." But I only said, "Just curious." Later, when the others were distracted by dessert, I asked her if she would help me bring out extra plates from the kitchen. She agreed too quickly. Of course she did. She thought the kitchen might offer privacy. She thought privacy would favor her. The moment the door swung closed behind us, she turned to me with a look that was almost arrogant. Almost. Not quite. A little eagerness still leaked through. "I know what this is," she said. "Do you?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "If you have something to say it." There it was. The script she had prepared for the woman she believed I was. The jealous wife. The emotional one. The one who would shout, cry, accuse, make herself look unstable and therefore dismissible. But I had prepared too. I opened the drawer beside the counter and took out my phone. Her gaze flicked down to it and then back up. There was a tiny change in her mouth. The first sign of concern. "I already did," I said quietly. "I invited you here." She frowned. "What?" "I invited you here because I wanted witnesses," I said. "And because I wanted you comfortable enough to stop pretending." Her face tightened. Not enough. She was still trying to decide whether I was bluffing. Then I set the phone on the counter and tapped the screen. A recording began to play. Her own voice filled the kitchen. Clear. Smooth. Completely impossible to mistake. "You know you still think about me," she said on the recording. "You always do when things get hard." The room outside the kitchen had gone quiet. I could tell because the sound of cutlery had stopped. Because even the soft music from the living room seemed suddenly very far away. Denise's eyes widened. "That's," she began. "There's more," I said. I had not lied. That was the beauty of it. There were texts. Voice notes. Screenshots. Dates. Times. Enough to make denial expensive. Her skin lost color. She glanced toward the kitchen door as if she could run through it and become someone else in the next room. But I stepped sideways, blocking her path without touching her. "I'm done being polite," I said. "I'm done pretending you were confused. You knew exactly what you were doing." She swallowed. "You don't understand." "I understand enough." She tried to smile then, but it came out crooked. "He told you things." Her voice had dropped. "He made promises. I didn't think he'd—" "Don't blame him now," I said. "You had every chance to stop." That is when she made her mistake. Not the flirting. Not the messages. Not the years of orbiting around my marriage like a patient little moon. Her mistake was thinking she could still control the room. So she stepped closer and lowered her voice. "If you do this, you'll embarrass him too." I almost laughed. Almost. There it was. Not remorse. Not fear. Not even shame. Protection. She still thought of him first. Even while cornered, even while exposed, even while her face was draining of confidence, she was trying to save him. That told me everything I needed to know. I turned the phone up a little louder. Another recording played. Then another. Adrian's voice this time, low and tired and unmistakably his. The kitchen door opened. Adrian stood there, frozen in the frame, his face gone blank with the kind of panic that arrives too late to disguise itself. Behind him, I could see Elena and the others in the dining room, all of them staring. No one was pretending not to hear anymore. Denise turned toward him as if he might still rescue her with one sentence. He did not move. His silence was its own confession. I looked at him and felt something strange and clean settle into place inside me. Not rage. Not even grief. Just the clarity that comes when a lie finally stands in the light and stops pretending to be air. "You told her I was imagining things," I said. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "That's not," he began. But the sentence died there, because now everyone was listening, and now every small excuse sounded like what it was. Denise stepped back. Her heel bumped the cabinet. Her eyes darted from me to him, then to the doorway, then back again. She had wanted a private war. Instead, she had been handed a public ending. I took one slow breath. Then another. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. That steadiness frightened them both more than shouting ever could have. "I made copies of everything," I said. Messages, calls, the deleted thread, the meeting invitations, the receipts, the times you lied, the times she stayed, the times you both thought I was too quiet to notice. Adrian stared at me, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked small. Not helpless. Not misunderstood. Just small. Denise said, "Please." The word came out bare. Human, almost. But it was too late for that kind of voice. I tilted my head. "For what?" She did not answer. Because there was no answer that would not sound like an admission. I reached past her, picked up my phone, and ended the recording. The silence afterward felt enormous. Then I said the only thing left to say. "Both of you are going to sit there and listen to what happens next." Adrian took one step forward. I looked at him, and he stopped. That was the moment he understood the trap was never the recording. The trap was the room, the witnesses, the order of the evening. The way I had let him believe he was managing a quiet wife, instead of stepping into a chamber I had prepared piece by piece with patience. And because the evening was not done with them yet, I smiled. Just once. Small. Controlled. Then I turned toward the dining room and called for Elena. It was time for the rest of the evidence. Elena came first. She always moved quickly when she sensed a fire under the floorboards. I handed her the envelope without a word, and she understood immediately that this was not gossip. This was structure. Documentation. The kind of thing that does not vanish just because someone asks it to. Inside were printed screenshots, dates, call logs, and the kind of small, lethal details people only laugh at when they think they will never be asked to explain them. Elena read the first page, then the second, and her face changed in a way I will never forget. Not shock. Not pity. Recognition. The recognition of a woman who has watched another woman be quietly managed for too long. "Jesus," she said under her breath. Denise flinched at the sound. Adrian did not move at all. He stood in the doorway like a man waiting for the house to collapse around him, except he had built half the walls himself. I reached for the second envelope. This one was for our neighbor Martin, the co-worker who owed Adrian a favor and had arrived hoping for dessert and small talk, not a catastrophe. He took the papers with an expression of discomfort that quickly hardened into something else when he saw the timestamps. Men like Martin always think they understand a situation until the evidence starts speaking in a voice that sounds too organized to dismiss. "I don't want to be involved," he said immediately. "You already are," I replied. "You were invited because you're the only person in this room who has seen Adrian lie about his schedule and then laugh about it later." Martin looked up. Adrian stared at the floor. That was answer enough. Denise tried to recover. I admired the effort in a cold way. Some people are not brave, but they are disciplined. They know that if they can regain breath, they may regain control. "This is ridiculous," she said, lifting her chin. "You're making this into something it isn't." I looked at her. Really looked. The black dress. The polished nails. The careful mouth. The tiny crack in her composure where fear had begun to show. "You came into my house," I said quietly. "You stood in my doorway. You texted my husband at night, deleted messages, rewrote history, and looked me in the face while doing it. You don't get to call this ridiculous just because it finally has witnesses." The silence after that was sharp enough to cut. Nobody spoke. Even the music from the living room felt too far away to matter. Then Adrian said my name. Softly. Like that might still save him. I turned toward him. "No," I said. One word. "Complete." He swallowed. "Please just hear me out." "Why?" I asked. "You heard me out every time I said something felt wrong. You just decided my instincts were inconvenient." His face twitched. He wanted to interrupt. He wanted to explain. Men always want the luxury of explanation after the damage is done. But I was done granting it. I walked to the dining room table and picked up my laptop. I opened it. A folder waited on the screen, already prepared, already labeled, already copied to cloud storage, and an external drive locked in the hall closet. The trap had never relied on hope. It relied on redundancy. "Before anyone says anything else," I said, "you should know I sent everything to my lawyer this afternoon." That changed the room. Truly changed it. Not because of the word lawyer. Because of the timing. People can hear anger. They can hear tears. They can even hear accusations. But when they hear paperwork moving through the world ahead of them, they understand they are already late. Denise's expression emptied. Adrian's shoulders dropped by half an inch. Martin took a step back as if the floor had become unstable. I clicked to the next file. "These are location records," I said. "These are message backups. These are the 2 occasions you told me you were working late while your phone was active at her apartment complex." Adrian looked up so fast I thought he might break something in his own neck. "You tracked my phone?" "No," I said. "You shared location access with the family account 6 months ago and forgot to turn it off. You were too relaxed to notice what you were leaving open." That was the truth. Always better than invention. Denise let out a short laugh that sounded almost hysterical. "This is insane." I turned to her. "Is it?" She had nothing. Of course she did not. The problem with clever women who cross the line is that they often believe the line is imaginary. They think confidence can overwrite evidence. It cannot. From the living room I heard a chair scrape. One of the neighbors had stood up. Then another. The dinner was over, though no one had announced it. I should have felt triumphant then. That is what stories usually promise. The wife learns the truth, sets the trap, and watches everyone kneel before the evidence. But the truth is less theatrical. It is colder. It arrives like a clear winter morning after a sleepless night. What I felt was relief. Not happiness. Not even vengeance. Relief that I no longer had to keep the shape of a lie in my hands. Adrian took a step toward me. We can fix this. I laughed then, not because it was funny, because it was so late, and he still wanted to speak like time was on his side. Fix it? I repeated. You think this is a broken lamp? You think if you replace the bulb, the room goes back to normal? He went pale. I could see the exact moment he realized I was not going to bargain. Denise touched his arm before she could stop herself. Instinct. Habit. Ownership, maybe. Every eye in the room saw it. Even hers. She let go too quickly, but it was already done. There it was. The final proof. Not a kiss. Not a confession. A reflex. The kind of touch that tells the truth before the mouth can catch up. Martin looked from her hand to Adrian's face, and then to me. He understood enough to want no part of it, which meant he understood more than most. I'm leaving, he said. Good, I replied. Tell the others if they ask that you saw exactly what you needed to see. He did not argue. He just left, quietly, with the awkward haste of a man escaping a room that has become morally radioactive. The others followed the same way. Elena lingered long enough to touch my wrist once, a brief pressure of solidarity. Then she took the flowers Denise had brought, set them in the trash bin without looking at them, and walked out. When the front door finally closed, only 3 of us remained. Me, Adrian, Denise. The room felt smaller after the witnesses left, but weaker too. I looked at Denise first. You can go, I said. She blinked. She had expected me to explode, to chase, to claw, to do something theatrical enough to make her feel less exposed. You're just letting me leave? She asked. No, I said. I'm letting you walk out under your own power. That's different. Her lips parted. For a second, I saw something like shame. Not enough to save her, but enough to make the ending human. She looked at Adrian then, and he looked away. There are moments when the body gives up on the performance before the mind does. This was one of them. Denise picked up her coat from the back of the chair. Her hand shook only once. She turned at the door. I didn't think you'd be like this, she said to me. I met her eyes. Neither did I. Then she was gone. Adrian and I remained in the dining room, surrounded by half-finished plates and the kind of silence that is expensive to maintain. He tried to speak once. I raised a hand. He stopped. No more, I said. You had all the speaking you were entitled to. His jaw tightened. He looked at me with the wounded expression of a man who thinks he has lost something valuable, when in truth, he has only lost access. I picked up my phone again and sent one final message to my lawyer. Simple. Direct. The kind of sentence that changes a life because it does not ask permission. Then I turned to him. You can stay in the guest room tonight, I said. Tomorrow, you leave. He stared at me as though he had not heard correctly. This is my house too. I nodded once. It was our house. That changed when you decided to make me a fool in it. He flinched at that. Good. Let him feel the shape of the words. The next few days passed. The way storms pass after the first impact has already happened. Loud at first. Then strangely silent. Lawyers called. Messages arrived. A sister phoned. His mother left a voicemail full of confusion and selective concern. People always ask for both sides when the first side is being held up by lies and the second side is holding receipts. I did not answer most of them. I did not need to. The evidence had already done what it needed to do. Adrian moved into a hotel by the end of the week. He tried to turn the story into a misunderstanding, then a rough patch, then a mutual failure. When none of that worked, he tried silence. Silence is a common last refuge for men who have run out of plausible language. Denise, I heard later, had told a different version to anyone who would listen. She said I had overreacted. She said Adrian had been confused. She said I had set a trap. That part was the only honest sentence she ever spoke. Yes, I had set a trap. That was the whole point. I did not wake up one day and find myself trapped inside their lie. I built a way out of it. When the divorce papers were signed, I did not cry. Not in the office. Not in the car. Not when I got home. I stood in the kitchen and watched the afternoon light move across the counter where Denise had once rested her hand too long, and I felt something close to peace. Not joy. Peace. There is a difference. Joy erupts. Peace settles. I changed the locks 2 days later. I boxed up his things. I put his coffee mug in the donation bag without hesitation. I deleted the family account, canceled the shared subscription, and took my name off the lease of every place that had once held the word "we" like a promise. There was one final message from him. Of course there was. Men who lose access to your life often mistake that loss for romance. He wrote, "I never meant to hurt you." I read it once. Then I deleted it. That was the last time I gave his intentions more weight than his actions. A month later, Elena invited me to coffee. She sat across from me in a quiet place with big windows and told me that what I had done had given her courage to stop excusing things in her own life. That mattered more to me than the revenge ever did. Because the trap had not only caught the people inside it, it had exposed the pattern. That is how these things work, sometimes. You think you are building a snare for two selfish people, and what you really build is a mirror. People see themselves in it. Some look away. Some apologize. Some lie harder. But the image stays. I never saw Denise again. I did not need to. Her place in my life was not a person anymore. It was a lesson. She had crossed a boundary because she thought boundaries were decorations. Adrian had allowed it because he mistook cowardice for peace. And I had watched, measured, waited, and then closed the door with precision. Some women break loudly. Some break quietly. And some do not break at all. They become exact. I became exact. Exact in what I accepted. Exact in what I refused. Exact in the way I looked at men who thought kindness meant compliance. And if anyone ever asks me whether the trap was worth it, I know the answer. Not because I enjoyed the exposure. Not because I wanted the humiliation. But because sometimes the only way to stop a person from taking one more step over the line is to make them stand in the middle of it and finally look down. That night, after the last box was packed and the last message was deleted and the house was mine again, I stood alone in the kitchen. The air was still. The lights were soft. Nothing moved except the clock. I placed my hand flat on the counter where the truth had come out. Then I whispered into the empty room, not to them, but to myself. Never again. And this time,